Sunday is Pentecost Sunday. It is the 50th day after Easter. It is the annual celebration of the Holy Spirit coming upon what we now know as Christendom and the beginning of the church. It's the annual birthday party of the church, one of the three highest of holy days in Christendom. As an out clergy person with barely a big toe still in the institution, I'm not going to be participating, not going to be invited to any of the happy birthday church celebrations again this year. But I find that I am in good company on this side of the church door. In fact, Gallup poll, just in time for Pentecost, released a new study this spring showing more about the rise and, fall of Christendom. And it's really quite alarming. Turns out that a huge number of us, a quarter of us at least, have no religious affiliation anymore. It used to be like 10%, and now it's like 23%. It's a huge number have no religious affiliation. When you look along generational lines, it's even more concerning. It's nearly half of the youth, of the millennials, identify as simply not having religion. So Christendom, as we know it, is in kind of a free fall. It's kind of spiraling toward, death. And sure, there are exceptions. There are individual churches that are thriving and doing great things. There are niche markets, good marketing campaigns. One of the alarming kind of statistics from the rubble is that churches that are very conservative, small e evangelical, are actually doing better than progressive, more compassionate churches, although everybody is experiencing the decline. It's a chilling time to be in the church. As we celebrate the birthday party, I'm struck that there are different kinds of birthday parties, right? There's the birthday party you have for the infant or toddler. That's their whole life is in front of them, and it's kind of a magical time to celebrate possibility. There's a bounce house, and there's a clown, and there's a real lightness in the air. There's the birthday party when you turn 40 or when you turn 50, and there are those milestones, and they're just kind of like blinking light, caution. And then there's the birthday party for great Aunt Matilda, who is 101, right? And you all gather because you know it's probably the last time you're going to gather, but you did last year and you might again next year, but every year Aunt Matilda just is like fading from your eyes. So pictures become important, memorabilia becomes important. You're talking about what happened in the past. There's a sadness mixed in, and there's a strange smell too, right? As we celebrate the birthday of the church, it's kind of curious that we haven't had this conversation about whether the church is in its infancy or in its early years, middle years, late years, oh my gosh, end of life years, right? Because every organism, every institution, everything that is living has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And as we look at what's happening to the church in America and really worldwide, what we see is the church is quite literally in that last phase. The church as an institution is dying, and it ought shape how we make this birthday celebration this year. One of the things when we acknowledge that the birthday is for someone who is aging and in the process of transitioning out of this world, we often bring along the youth kind of to balance, to remind us of what comes next. And I think that's an important process when we're celebrating an elder's birthday, because there is in that celebration a real sense of grief. When we acknowledge that this is the birthday of an aged institution and that the end of the life of the institution is close at hand, there is a sense of grief. So we want to bring with us some understanding of what might come next, right? And that's really hard to imagine. We've not really practiced that very much. Perhaps it's worthy to note that this Pentecost Sunday is based on a story that is not originally Christian. We like to forget that Jesus wasn't Christian, nor were his friends Christian, nor were the early Christians Christian, right? They were not. They were Jewish. Every single one of them was Jewish. And there was no intention in those very early days of creating an alternative religious tradition. It was in the context of Judaism that Jesus' friends gathered 50 days after Passover for the festival called Shavuot. Shavuot is the festival where the community celebrates the gift of Torah. So 50 days ago at Passover, there was a celebration that was freedom from bondage, and the Exodus story was read. 50 days later, we're celebrating freedom for devotion with the gift of Torah. So Peter and the friends have gathered in this upper room, and they've come together. They are themselves in a time of great grief and confusion, and kind of excitement, but horror. It's just a menagerie of emotions. But they come together to read the Torah, to read the ancient stories, to make sense and meaning out of what would appear to be a world of chaos. And as they gather and open the ancient texts, something amazing happens, they say. They say that there were flames that danced on the heads of those who gathered. They say that the wind blew through that place and busted open the windows and pushed them out onto the streets. They say that they spoke and heard in languages that they didn't know that they knew. They were out on the street now, and there were Jews from every corner of the earth, so says the text. What they had in common was a Jewish faith. All else was up for grabs. So Peter attended to that Jewish faith, and he began to preach and tell the story of a Jew among them, whose name was Jesus, who had been crucified by the Romans as a political prisoner. Peter explained that though he had been crucified and they had seen this terror in their midst, inexplicably, Hades could not hold this one. And the spirit that was in Jesus pushed his life from beyond, and he continued to be in their midst in a way they could not explain. This is, Peter says, this is the long-awaited day. This is it. We've been taught that this story is about the institution of a new religion. It is the advent, we've been told, of the Holy Spirit and the beginning of Christendom. But this story was not originally by, for, or about people who would call themselves Christian. It was a Jewish story. It was a Jewish community. What did this strange experience mean in their hearing? I suspect the message was something like this: beware the wind. Be careful what you pray for. Don't wave red in front of the bull unless you're ready to run. When you dare to pray for the coming of God in your midst, for the holy to be alive among you, it means that things are going to change. It means that what we always knew, institutions exist to protect and to order, which is pretty much the antithesis of this story. This story is about how the community gathered with a very clear understanding of their holiday, a very clear understanding of what they were about. And the Spirit busted into their room, upset every assumption they had, tipped over everything, flipped all their assumptions upside down. This is what the Spirit does. But this story is not about Christendom. This story tells us about the Spirit dancing, but this is not a new Spirit dancing. This is the Spirit that brooded over the face of the waters at the very beginning of time. This is the Spirit that broke forth on the mountaintop. This is the Spirit that danced with Abram. This is the Spirit that made Sarai laugh. This is the Spirit with whom Jesus came into the world. This is the Spirit that dances in your life and in mine. And this Spirit cannot be contained or controlled or codified. And this Spirit, it is what we celebrate on this Pentecost Sunday. And with or without the church, this Spirit is going to dance.